May it please the court. Your Honor, this case is a tragedy. I think that is probably about the only thing that is clear and agreed upon by the state and the defense in this case. You're going to hear that Rebecca Ruud gave birth to Savannah in June of 2001. You're going to hear how Rebecca, Reba, as her friends and family would call her, was abused by her mother. And when she gave birth to Savannah, that mother who had abused her kidnapped Savannah. And there was a long process. And you are going to hear that she fought to get her daughter back. And she did that so that Savannah could be adopted by Tamil and David Leckie, who she had become friends with. She got to know them. In fact, it was more than friendship. In fact, you're going to hear from Tamil, we believe you'll hear from Tamil, that she was like a sister, like family. And in fact, Savannah had 3 younger siblings that she loved and adored. One of them being another biological child of Reba, and that they adopted as well. And you're going to hear some information about that adoption and how it took place. You will hear how Savannah always knew that Reba was her birth mother. There was never any secret about that. Reba was in the life of Savannah all the time. You'll hear how for around 15 years Savannah lived with Tamil in Minnesota. But during that time, family dynamics changed. There was a divorce. There was a new boyfriend that came in, then another different boyfriend that had come in. Savannah was you're going to hear that during that time, Savannah was diagnosed with ADHD and was on the autism spectrum. She was also diagnosed with depression. In fact, the defense will present evidence to show how Savannah was hospitalized at least twice for suicidal ideation due to self-harm and a plan to commit suicide. At least at the last hospitalization in June of 2016, she was prescribed medications for her ADHD and depression. And Tamil did not want her released from that hospital. In fact, the defense will show that she indicated to that hospital that if Savannah was released, she would be dead. You will hear how Tamil no longer wanted Savannah to live with her, and she pushed this vulnerable and susceptible and troubled teen to live with her biological mother in Missouri. She didn't let her live with family. There were options. She didn't let her live with any of those in Minnesota. She pushed her to the farthest place she could push her. There was no plan for this to be there was no plan for this to be a successful venture. The legal authority for Reba to take care of Savannah wasn't there. It wasn't given to her until June of 2017. There was supposed to be, and I think you'll see this in text, an agreed upon amount of $250 a month that was supposed to be sent to Reba to care for Savannah. But it was rarely sent. And when it was sent, there were deductions for random things. There was no power, the power of attorney that did finally come was in June of 2017, even though it was promised early on. There was no guardianship. There was no way there was no way for Reba to take care of the child, get her the medication she needed, or any of that as far as getting medical help. She didn't have the legal authority. So part of that, what you will hear is that she was continued to be enrolled in a Minnesota online course instead of being transferred to a Missouri online schooling, because Reba couldn't do that because she didn't have that legal authority. You will hear how this experiment was supposed to be for a trial basis until Thanksgiving of 2016. But you will hear how that date came and went, no Tamil or David. Christmas 2016 came and went, no Tamil or David. In fact, Tamil couldn't even bother to take calls from Savannah, much less after the first few months. However, even though this was a tough time for Savannah, not seeing her family in Minnesota, her grades were improving. You will see that in some text messages, I believe, and other testimony. We anticipate you will also hear how Savannah continually was let down by her Minnesota family. They would promise to come see her and then would not show up. They would promise to come in November 2016, December of 2016, and then in June of 2017 for her birthday. But days came and went, and no Tamil or David. One bright spot for Savannah during that time was she got to see her grandparents in April of 2017. And she was excited about that. She was happy. She hadn't seen anybody since she had left there. She got to see them for about a day and a half, maybe, and there was some flooding that came in, and they needed to get out of there. I think that's what you'll possibly hear. We anticipate you're going to hear that Savannah was hardworking around the farm. You'll hear that from people who knew her on the farm. She also enjoyed her time on the farm. She enjoyed the animals on the farm. She also enjoyed being a cadet on the Theodosia Fire Department. And I believe you'll hear that from the volunteer fire persons that are going to be witnesses, they enjoyed having her around. And she was a strong, able-bodied young woman that was dealing with some mental health issues. But she was not weak or disabled, as you might hear from a few of the state's witnesses. Reba has been incarcerated since August of 2017. Now, during that time, she would have come in contact with hundreds of other inmates in facilities she was housed in. Out of the hundreds of other inmates she would have been in contact during that time, only 3 have tales to tell. And you will be able to judge the credibility of those witnesses. You will hear some fantastical stories from each of these 3 witnesses, but their stories don't align with the other witnesses who are actually there. They also don't align with the evidence. But some of what they will align with are the stories from the media that were out at that time. The state will call several law enforcement officers. We anticipate that they will all tell you how hard they worked on this case and how they investigated this fully. What we believe you will also notice, although, is that you will never hear how from the very beginning this was not a missing persons investigation. It was in fact a death investigation. It was about the thoughts and feelings and not evidence. And that was even said and would be quoted from Sheriff Ruud in newspaper articles from the Ozark Times. Here's what you are not going to hear from the state's witnesses. You are not going to hear that Savannah was murdered. You will hear no scientific evidence as to the cause of death, the manner of death, or the actual time of death. You're going to hear admissions from Rebecca herself that she burnt Savannah's body. But that is all you're going to hear, because that is all she did. And we are going to ask at the end of this trial that you find Rebecca Ruud not guilty of counts 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, Your Honor. The state will call Sheriff Darren Reed.